already thought through the matchup. They're just ready to go.
It is the Tornadus and the Urshifu single strike again. We were kind of laughing about this last game. The Tornadus Urshifu combo is still running strong, but now it's the single strike up against the Fluttermane and Ogerpon Wellspring mask form. Again, this is one of the safest leads in the game for a team like Luka's.
It really is, as you can redirect any attacks away from the Fluttermane. In this case, a Wicked Blow or a Sucker Punch are essentially rendered useless. That being said, we have seen a lot of trainers like Enzo focus on U-turn in this moment in time to make sure they can get good damage down on that Ogerpon and pivot away from an otherwise very unfavorable matchup. But as we see these trainers lock into some terrastalizations, I think Luka is anticipating this and most likely looking to focus in on that Tornadus as a result.
Yeah, this Fluttermane going to go ahead and get the Fairy Terrastalization on the board, resisting all of the attacks coming out from this choice-banded Urshifu on the side of Enzo's team. That's a U-turn into the Ogerpon. The Choice Band doing so much work, picking up a lot of damage on the Ogerpon. Like you mentioned, very common for this Urshifu to try to dodge the redirection and just get free damage off onto Urshifu. And Golden Go is the choice for Enzo in the back. Really strong against the Fluttermane that is just locked into a fairy type attack.
But unlike previous setups for this, the Ogerpon didn't go for Follow Me. That U-turn just naturally targeted it, which means this Ivy Cudgel goes directly into the Golden Go and barely misses out on a KO with a critical hit to assist as well.
It misses out on the KO, but with that critical hit, that's so much incidental damage on the Golden Go that it's no longer safe from even this locked-in Moonblast.
It is not safe anymore, but Enzo was able to set up Tailwind and remove the Tornadus from the field almost immediately. So even though that Golden Go is at such low health, with a lack of priority options on Luka's side of the field, he has to protect that Fluttermane from a very powerful Make It Rain, especially after committing his Terrastalization to it.
Yeah, and that's why we see this Fluttermane switching out for the Gouging Fire. And crucially, this Golden Go is holding the Metal Coat item, so no leftovers for recovery. Golden Go is going to be at that reduced health for the entire rest of the game. Luka is protecting the switch-in of the Gouging Fire from an attack from this choice-banded Urshifu with that Follow Me. The close combat easily able to pick up the damage on that Ogerpon, lowering the defenses of the single strike Pokemon as Golden Go launches a single target Make It Rain, but not the squishy target of the Fluttermane. It's actually the Paradox Beast itself, Gouging Fire, tanking that so easily as Rillaboom able to come in now.
And now, similar to the position that Luka was in one turn ago, this Urshifu is locked into a move that's not necessarily optimal against the Rillaboom and the Gouging Fire on the field. It is still at full health, so it's probably going to be able to take a Grassy Glide from this Rillaboom, even if it were to target down. So that is a good spot for Luka. I think, though, if you're trying to focus more on the long term of this battle, it would be better to just flinch that Urshifu, get yourself through the final turn of Tailwind here on the field, and maybe go for a Breaking Swipe as well. Do a little bit of damage to the Golden Go, put it within knockout range for sure from a second Breaking Swipe, and start to lower that Urshifu's attack. If you can lock the Urshifu on the field, locked into close combat, that's going to be such a great endgame for your own Fluttermane, which is exactly why Enzo just does not want to keep it on the field.
Oh, but here's the Entei coming out on the field for Enzo. Takes the fake out from Rillaboom. Of course, the inner focus would have prevented it from flinching anyway, but on the switch, not going to matter. A second Make It Rain. That damage is starting to add up, but the Breaking Swipe on the switch-in is going to catch the Entei, actually drop the attack. Same to the Golden Go, but more importantly is that little bit of chip damage, which is maybe just barely outpacing this grassy terrain recovery. That may be enough for one more Breaking Swipe.
It may be, but realistically speaking, the Rillaboom is not going to threaten a knockout onto the Entei regardless this turn, even if it were to go for a high horsepower. I think a better use of Rillaboom here is going for the Grassy Glide into the Golden Go, ensuring that you get that knockout, and then allowing your Gouging Fire to sort of continue to Breaking Swipe the opposing attacking Pokemon. You know, we saw Roaring Moon in previous regulations love to be in this position with just Breaking Swipe after Breaking Swipe. you really can limit your opponent's options as a result.
Yeah, picking up the KO on Golden with that grassy glide, like you mentioned, and the Sacred Fire misses. Rillaboom able to dodge that in the grassy terrain, moving to the beat of its own drum as another breaking swipe catches the intake, drops it down to -2 attack as this Tailwind runs out. That means that this Gouging Fire is now the fastest thing on the field, barring Sucker Punches from that Choice Band Urshifu.
And with no Pokemon that can block those priority attacks in play, and especially knowing that there is a Flutter Mane in the back of Luka's party that has to almost certainly choose an attacking move at this point in the game. We can talk a little more about that later. I think that locking in the Sucker Punch here is a fine choice for Enzo. Does still have to be very, very particular about how he plays against the Gouging Fire, at least, as continuous breaking swipes here would be very comfortable for Luka to commit to. But really, you want to get a knockout onto either the Rillaboom or the Gouging Fire this turn, so that Urshifu can then focus in on the Flutter Mane and try and tie things up.
You're totally right, though. This Terra Dark Urshifu actually feels really safe to Sucker Punch. The Assault Vest on the Rillaboom, and the Gouging Fire holds on with 4 hit points. Entei doesn't follow up. The Grassy Glide connects into Entei for a little bit of damage, and Gouging Fire able to get another breaking swipe off. This is actually may have huge repercussions for the damage that this Urshifu can get off with the Sucker Punch, and another Sacred Fire misses.
That is really unfortunate for Enzo, as those 2 Sacred Fires, even after all of the attack drops, would have probably brought Rillaboom down, certainly within Sucker Punch range, possibly even within knockout range outright. So it is how Sacred Fire works, unfortunately. And now it looks like Luka feels a lot more comfortable about his positioning, going straight for the Burning Bulwark, which won't be able to burn the Urshifu at least, but will keep it safe for a turn.
Well, we see the Sucker Punch actually connecting with the Rillaboom this time, in the Grassy Glide finally picks up the KO on the Entei with a critical hit. Luka is getting the rolls he needs to get out of this position. Gouging Fire with the Burning Bulwark, trying to dodge a Sucker Punch from Enze's Urshifu, but now Enzo is locked into that attack for the rest of the game.
With so much damage on the field from Luka, it's really just a matter of time until Flutter Mane returns. That being said, I do think that the Rillaboom and that Heat Crash from the Gouging Fire should do enough damage to pick up the KO onto that Urshifu outright, giving Luka the critical win in this top 8 match for game number 1. That being said, though, he did have a couple of things working in his favor in that matchup. I do feel like if Enzo was super worried about the breaking swipes adding up on the Urshifu, he could have just as easily locked into Wicked Blow those last couple of turns. Would have had to play it a little bit differently, but would have been able to maximize the damage output from that Urshifu. We also saw those 2 Sacred Fire misses, which would have added up to a ton of damage on that Rillaboom. So overall, even though that game felt like a very comfortable win from Luka, if you look at just the Pokemon remaining at the end of it, I do think that was really, really close until those final couple of turns.
Yeah, a couple of big rolls for Luka, starting with the critical hit on that Golden Go, making sure that that Pokemon could be taken out by a couple of incidental pieces of damage. This Choice Band Urshifu on Enzo's side had the potential to run over the team without if there was additional support, but Luka, with that critical hit, able to pick up the KO on the Golden Go, get that Pokemon away from his team as a threat in this Entei, could not hit a Sacred Fire at all this game. Just had to take breaking swipe after breaking swipe from the Gouging Fire, and then Gouging Fire just barely holding on against that Sucker Punch, allowing Luka to lock that up.
Yeah, these trainers are honestly ready to go in game number 2, but real quick, if I were in Enzo's shoes and thinking about possible adjustments, I don't think I'd necessarily make an adjustment there. I think you still bring the Entei, you still start out with this Tornadus and Urshifu combination, as Tailwind is such a valuable resource when facing off against a Choice Specs Flutter main. I think you just hope that maybe your Sacred Fires land a little bit more comfortably, or depending on the information you learned from that game number 1, you try and bring that Ursa Luna in the back under Tailwind so that it can outspeed and just have, again, a much more comfortable matchup into a Pokemon like Flutter main.
Yeah, I think if you're Enzo, you're really happy with the way that game 1 went, except for the rolls that you got on the critical hit and the 2 Sacred Fire misses. Probably feeling pretty good, and that's why the Urshifu Single Strike and Tornadus are back out on the field, but Luka also happy with having the Ogerpon and Fluttermane.
And I think we're going to see a very similar, in theory, turn play out here, only this time Luka did opt to ensure the target of that Ogerpon with Follow Me.
Yeah, Follow Me from Ogerpon, actually just going to take the Wicked Blow, survives with 10 hit points even through the Choice Band and a Dazzling Gleam. Luka still has Terastallization available and picks up the KO on that big Choice Band Urshifu that was a monster and a threat in game 1. But now Enzo has Tailwind up and has Gholdengo out on the field, which does not care about that Follow Me with Make It Rain.
No, and we saw Luka when in this position in the previous game, switch in the Gouging Fire on his side of the field to take the Make It Rain damage from Gholdengo. So an adaptation here from Enzo could simply be clicking Nasty Plot if he wants to try and make this Gholdengo even scarier, or go straight for a Shadow Ball into that slot for more damage. We are going to see an adjustment here from Enzo, most likely to try and support the Gholdengo better. And again, Entei, just a very bulky Pokemon, a great Pokemon to be side by side with your +2 special attack Gholdengo.
There's the Nasty Plot coming out from Gholdengo, feels pretty safe staring down this Fluttermane locked into Dazzling Gleam. Here's the Ivy Cudgel, though. Last time it was a critical hit. This time, Gholdengo able to tank it easily. And now, Gholdengo with the Nasty Plot boost, with Entei out on the field as well, threatening potentially a Stomping Tantrum or other damage into a Gouging Fire switch in. This is a much stronger position for Enzo.
Luka can't safely switch a Pokemon here because nothing wants to take a +2 Metal Coat boosted Make It Rain, which is exactly why we're seeing the Ogerpon buy itself a little bit of time for one more Follow Me, and then give the Fluttermane. Taking one for the team here, unfortunately. If you want to get that one-hit knockout button ready, I'm pretty sure we're going to see it.
There it is. That's the one-hit KO on the Fluttermane. Fluttermane did its job, though, knocked out the Choice Band Urshifu turn 1 and dealt 50% to that Tornadus in the back. So it did a lot of damage, but now a free switch in for Gouging Fire, as Luka is going to need to stall out these turns of Tailwind. Otherwise, this Metal Coat Gholdengo, we saw how much damage it was doing even into this Gouging Fire at neutral and then -1. With Entei also on the field, capable of threatening super effective damage with the Stomping Tantrum, may be able to pick up the KO or at least put it in, say, extreme speed range.
For sure, and this is such a different position in this game because of that. Ogerpon really wants to be the Pokemon to pick up the knockout on Entei for Enzo, but because of the Tailwind still being active, because of the fact that the Gholdengo essentially has another Make It Rain where it's not necessarily being penalized for dealing that damage, Enzo can focus in on that Gouging Fire, ensure that there are not a lot of attack drops here, but instead just opting to attack that Ogerpon prior to it having a chance to move.
Yeah, just going to go ahead and knock the Ogerpon off the field and fire off a Shadow Ball to hold on to that special attack boost if that Gholdengo got another shot, but it does not. Gets the Heat Crash, will pick up the KO there, so now it is just Entei, it is just Tornadus in the back for Enzo. But this is good timing. Tailwind has faded, which means that Enzo is going to be able to reset it thanks to the Covert Cloak.
And unlike the previous game, there are no attack drops currently stacked onto that Entei. So if Luka wants to try and stop the Tornadus from setting up Tailwind, he certainly can, but he's really going to struggle to deal damage to the Entei if he focuses too much on the Tornadus. This is a very optimal turn for Enzo to reset up Tailwind. If Tornadus sticks around from here on out, yeah, you can go for a couple Bleakwind Storms for sure. But Entei ultimately is going to be the Pokemon that closes out this matchup. matchup. And if Enzo wants to be super sneaky about it, he can actually still terrastalize his Entei into that fairy typing and just not have to worry about anything Gouging Fire has to throw out.
Well, the first terrestrialization is going to be the Rillaboom. Luka preserving the Terra and not going for the fairy typing on Fluttermane means that Luka's Rillaboom can now dodge the damage from those huge Sacred Fires, not trusting that there will be more misses there. Enzo goes for the Tailwind on Tornadus as the Gouging Fire uses the Burning Bulwark to protect itself. Entei's Stomping Tantrum into the Burning Bulwark. Does not get burned because it is still Fire type, but Rillaboom's Woodhammer connects on Tornadus and picks up that KO. And now Enzo's Entei has Tailwind, but is facing down two Pokemon that are extremely threatening.
It is unfortunate that Entei chose to target into the protecting Gouging Fire. That was the one out that Luka was looking for in this matchup. He can now pretty safely click High Horsepower and go for either Heat Crash or Breaking Swipe, depending on if he anticipated this terrestrialization. I believe we did see him click Breaking Swipe, but I do think that is the safer way to approach this endgame, because if your opponent decides, oh shoot, it's 1v2, maybe it's, maybe I'm not in this as much as I want to be at this point in time, you might be able to catch them off guard.
Well, the Breaking Swipe fails into the Fairy-type Entei now, and Rillaboom's High Horsepower, no longer super effective, deals a little bit of damage to the Entei. But now this Pokemon is... Entei needed probably a critical hit there to start threatening the Rillaboom. I think that Luka just has the damage here at this point.
I agree. Unfortunately for this Entei, when it is the Assault Vest variant, it's not necessarily as powerful as those normal type terrestrialization extreme speed users, and Enzo doesn't even have the Chen-Pao on his team to go alongside of that Pokemon to further boost his damage. So barring a critical hit here, that could have been huge, but unfortunately it does look like the combination of Heat Crash and Woodhammer will lock in the knockout.
That is a 1-2 punch. Luka, in 2 games, advances to the top 4 and the semifinals here in Charlotte.